Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Today's program is proudly brought to you by Whole Foods Market. Visit WholeFoodsMarket.com or download the Whole Foods Market app to learn more and find the store nearest to you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. We're a member-supported food radio network broadcasting over 35 weekly shows live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Join our hosts as they lead you through the world of craft brewing, behind the scenes of the restaurant industry, inside the battle over school food, and beyond. Find us at heritageradionetwork.org.
I like the way you do. Whoa, the way you took it so slow.
Hey, you're listening to Eat Your Words on Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host, Kathy Irway, and welcome to the summer season at Heritage Radio Network. We're so excited to be back. I'm really excited to be back with a great guest, way to start out the season. It is none other than Virginia Willis. She is the James Beard Award-winning cookbook author of 5 cookbooks, one of them being Lighten Up, Y'all. She is nothing short of a Southern food expert. She has a column called Cooking with Virginia. She's the editor-at-large for Southern Living, and she's been featured in Country Living, House Beautiful, USA Today. She also has a PBS series, Secrets of the Southern Table. But the cookbook we are going to talk about is her latest. It is called Secrets of the Southern Table, a food lover's tour of the global South. Hi, Virginia.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much for making it from all the way up from Atlanta.
Atlanta, Georgia. That's right.
And where it's beautiful and sunny and much more summer-like than here.
Yes.
So this cookbook is, it's a beautiful book, and it's at once a really deeply heartfelt and personal story about your Southern table, you know, starting from when you're a little kid in your grandmother's sink, watching her snap beans or something in the sink. But it's also, it takes in a vast sort of sweeping narrative about the historical, environmental, and social context of Southern cuisine. How do you think this book differs from your other work the most?
This book is quite different from my other cookbooks. So first of all, each chapter has a couple of stories about a harvester, a farmer, a maker. So it's not just my stories. I was doing a bit more journalism, truly. I spend a lot of time outside the South, and I travel a lot. Used to live in New York. I've lived, all over. And it's just sort of burbled up in me a couple years ago that people from outside the South, I don't think they really understand the South. They don't understand our dynamics. The food is so incredibly important, and food is important everywhere. But also I think that, there's this perception that Southern food is all fried chicken and
one-dimensional.
Fried. Very one-dimensional. And we're a cuisine of vegetables. We have a 12-month growing season, and
so
it's
jealous.
Just, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's something coming off a tree or out of the ground nearly 12 months out of the year. And so that's something that sort of started with Lighten Up Y'all, and then I just feel like I'm sort of digging deeper on that.
Got it. I've never seen a Southern cookbook, though, that had recipes for Chinese stir fry and char siu pork tenderloin, Mississippi style, that is.
So, for example, so there have been Chinese living in Mississippi since the Civil War. I mean, I think that there's this sort of automatic narrative that people from outside the South think that the South is only black and only white. And it's just simply not true. I mean, I've literally been asked, and I write about this in my introduction, I was literally asked if I'd ever met a Jewish person before.
At some conference.
That's crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, one of the oldest synagogues is in Charleston, and the whole entire country is in Charleston, South Carolina. So there's this sort of, it is part of the story, but it's not the only part of the story. So, for example, when slavery ended with the Civil War, Chinese immigrated to Mississippi, and they were meant to replace the slaves for picking cotton. Well, it's terrible work, and it didn't work out. But they stayed. So there's been this huge population in Mississippi of Chinese. Also, there used to be a direct route from Sicily to New Orleans. And so, we think about New York City as being this huge Italian-American population, and it is. But at one time in the 1800s, there were more Italians in New Orleans than in New York. So that's influenced the local foodways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you write about how, there's this one of the oldest Chinese grocery stores in Mississippi. And I was recently in New Orleans, and there was
Lucky Lady
Central Market, which is the old Italian grocery store. So that's infused into the culture and the cuisine there, like the muffaletta sandwich.
Yes, exactly. And New Orleans barbecue shrimp is essentially shrimp scampi. It's like so there are all these. So there's older parts of immigration to the South, and then now the Southeast is one of the fastest growing regions for Hispanics coming into the United States. There are more Vietnamese in Texas than any other part of the United States except for California. So that's not fried chicken, right? And so that obviously, that's my South too. And that's what I want to share with people, that, people see things on the media, or, just see that sort of typical caricature. And it's just really, it's just not that simple.
Right.
Not that one-dimensional.
Right. But as you mentioned, it's not a black and white situation, but there has been much tension.
Definitely.
And you do not shy away from describing that in this book. From an early age, you noticed racial tensions, and they continue. You write in the introduction that, and I want to quote this, so 1 second. You write, I don't know what it feels like to grow up as a person of color or someone of Jewish, Muslim, or Hindu faith in the Deep South. All I know now is that I feel I need to do what I need to do to bridge that gap, make that wrong right, and unlock the barriers that I can.
I feel very strongly about that. I don't know what it's like to be a person of color. I am a woman, therefore there's something there, and then I'm an open lesbian, so I have some discrimination factors, but there's no doubt that as a white woman, I experience a certain amount of white privilege. And I don't know what it's like to be a person of color in the South or anywhere, right? But I do feel very strongly, and I think that, food is what brings us together, and I don't mean to trivialize it by introducing food into the situation. I feel like that's the place that we can come together, is at the table. And I just feel really strongly that I need to do what I can to help the world be a better place.
Right. And this book is a really big-hearted, inclusive, homage to so many of these immigrants that you mentioned.
Right.
But how else does it manifest in your work, you think, that, doing what you can to make things right?
Well, for example, I hosted a dinner in Atlanta at the Atlanta History Center this past fall, and we didn't make a big deal out of it, but it was only women. All the chefs were women, the mixologists were women, the farmers were women.
That's so cool.
We didn't make a big deal out of it. We didn't announce it. We didn't put it in the press release. We just did it. And I very specifically, intentionally included a diversity of races, a diversity of ages, and I just feel like that's something, it's so, the political environment is so divisive now. Mm-hmm. So whatever I can do to put someone like that on stage with me or on a platform with me, I think is just the right thing to do.
That's awesome. And how do you think that this book, what do you hope to get from this book? I think we're jumping a little bit because I want to talk more about some of the recipes, but do you hope that people, in addition to mastering this fried okra recipe that is so beautiful on the cover and, and so forth, will sort of kind of pick up a different sense of what Southern cooking is?
I hope so. I really do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love fried chicken. I love biscuits. I love cornbread. I love all the traditional foods. I feel like that there's a responsibility I have as a cook and a writer and a chef to herald those foods. Those are the foods of my people. And yet, and I've said this many times, it's not as simple as it's just not that simple. And that if we were to view Southern food as only that would be like viewing Italian food as only spaghetti and meatballs,
right? Or
Mexican food as only a burrito. And I hope that people, I love the South. I love being from the South. I'm a proud Georgian. My family has been in the South since the 1700s. I mean, and I just want people to understand and to listen.
Yeah.
And to see that some of those awful, ugly caricatures that people see on television or the nightly news, it's not everybody.
Right.
Right.
I gotta ask, when people think of Southern cooking, maybe a lot of people think of Paula Deen.
Right.
What do you think of her influence and authority as a spokesperson for Southern cooking?
So I was a guest on Paula's show, and she was kind to me. It's television, right?
Yeah.
It's television.
Sure.
So I would not go so far as to call her a caricature, but it is a television show. It is not reality.
Right.
Right.
And she has a purpose there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she is authentically a Southern person, but I do also feel like that some of all of that, all the y'all is just turned up a bit. It's TV, right? It's not necessarily real life. And then, the butter, that's kind of became like shtick, right?
Right.
It was
it got
it was
intertwined
a thing, right?
with Southern cuisine to some extent.
And butter isn't really, if you want to talk about a real Southern fat, it would be lard. It wouldn't be butter.
Right.
Lard is would have been the fat of the South. So, and I do feel, it got complicated, but, with her reaction with the diet and the diabetes and then the ugly language, that's just, it was a caricature that was created and it also sort of ended it.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So there are more real and authentic voices out there.
Got it.
And I strive to be one of them.
Awesome. We're going to talk a lot more about these delicious recipes right after a quick little commercial break.
Today's program is brought to you by Whole Foods Market. From papayas and samosas to reishi mushrooms, if it's something that sounds delicious, chances are you'll find the freshest, best version of it at Whole Foods Market. They have more than 400 stores across the country, so if you consider pizza its own food group or just can't imagine when avocado toast wasn't a thing, Whole Foods Market has you covered. Visit WholeFoodsMarket.com to find a store near you. Whole Foods Market, whatever makes you whole.
Take off the taste, but swim it up your ass.
All right, and we're back chatting more with Virginia Willis. Her new book is Secrets of the Southern Table. She is sharing some secrets of the Southern Table. One of them I was really fascinated by is the sort of like relics of the past and these ingredients that you picked up and discussed, like Benny seeds, which is similar to sesame seed, but it's an heirloom. Tell me more.
So there's a fantastic company. It's called Anson Mills that you may be aware of.
I've had their grits.
So Glenn Roberts is one of the stories in the book. It's so the book I feature 2 different stories about an artisan, a maker, a harvester. So Anson Mills and Glenn, under the leadership of Glenn, is bringing back all these heirloom grains and seeds and such. And so he's very famous for the grits, but he's also bringing back Carolina gold rice and Benny seeds. So industrial agriculture, essentially after World War II, became all about production and not necessarily quality.
Or diversity of ingredients.
Exactly. So it was all about like how fast can we grow those tomatoes? How big can those tomatoes get? How quickly can they get that way? And if you take that and you just apply it to pretty much everything, Benny seeds or rice or tomatoes or chickens or anything, that's sort of what happened to American agriculture after World War II. And there's a movement, not only in the South, I think across the entire United States, where people are like, whoa, so that doesn't taste good? Why do we want to eat it? And it's also, I think, damaging in terms of a lack of diversity for seeds. So, people are working to bring back different heirloom things.
This is a fascinating story, too, because these heirloom seeds came from Africa. They were, consumed by enslaved Africans at the time who saved the seeds. And they're sort of used in all parts. So that the seeds can be they can be pressed for oil, and you can eat the greens.
Yes.
So you have a recipe here that uses the seeds much like sort of sesame seeds?
Yes. They are essentially sesame seeds. It's just called Benny. So, and it's been wonderful. There's these lovely Benny seed wafers that are famous in Charleston. It's like a little cookie. But I think that they do taste different. They're hugely important, like in Japanese cuisine, for example. But they're very much a part of Southern traditional.
I didn't know that. That is so cool. So, what other ingredients do you think would you have loved to include, but like couldn't? I don't know, for some reason. Are there anything like that?
Well, no. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there's something growing. I mean, I think one of the most important vegetables for Southern cooking is okra. Okay, so okra was originally West African or African. Rice, rice is hugely important in Southern food and cuisine. And collard greens, I love collard greens. I could eat them every day, But all of those things are steeped in Southern food and history.
Yeah. You don't shy away also from describing a very changed landscape in the South. You have this description of driving through mostly like a ghost town, it sounds like, that was once a bustling agrarian community of farmers. And, the South has been an agrarian society forever. And then you write how it was changed pretty much by industrial agriculture.
Yeah, so I was a history major once upon a time. I'm like a recovering history major. So during World War II, there was this enormous production of nitrogen that was used for ammunitions. And then after World War II, there was all this nitrogen. Well, nitrogen is essential it can be used as a fertilizer.
Yeah.
So that's when things really started to shift.
Right.
Not just in the South, but across the entire United States. And that's when we started more about production and less about quality. And so growing up in the South, like I saw all these little ghost towns, the closed shops and things like that. And it was only fairly recently that I understood how that happened. And it wasn't because people had opportunity and moved to the city. It was because the way that farming changed, and it quit being like a community, with a tractor and the tools,
a seed store, and
all that, it's gone, and so the seed is ordered from somewhere out in the Midwest and shipped, and you don't have to. There's not a mule or horses and it's this industrial. I mean,
the fabric
tractor
is falling apart. Yeah,
exactly. It's torn. So people, instead of having jobs in the agriculture, they had to move because there was no work. And that's essentially what happened. And I think it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
Hope it's
with
changing.
the stories that you tell, it sounds very promising, and it sounds a very powerful stories that you share. Folks that are trying to go against the grain and go against all odds to restart an organic farm or something like that, reclaiming that heritage. But you write that these cheap foods that we sort of traded these old way of life for. It's artificially cheap foods, because somebody's paying for it. You're right.
No, it's exactly. My friend, he's a fifth generation farmer. His name is Will Harris of White Oak Pastures. And he makes me sound like I'm not Southern at all. His accent's incredible. He's like, Virginia, chickens are meant to hunt and peck. Cows were meant to chew. But he has told me more than one occasion, like, nature abhors a monoculture. And that's what a lot of American agriculture is. It's like a farmer grows soybeans and that's it.
Right.
But that doesn't work, right? Because it just strips the soil and...
You have to keep adding stuff.
Exactly. You just have to keep adding stuff.
So you write, we're paying for it in some other way. If it's not at the grocery store for the cheap chicken or whatever it is. Do you think that the South is disproportionately affected because of its, long farming heritage?
Well, it may be, and then there's also another part of it that I think that can't be ignored is the fact that it's a lack of education, and the South has always been a poor society since the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It's always been agricultural; it's never been industrial. I mean, if you think back to middle school and learning American history. I remember being taught that there was more industry in the North, and that had everything to do with why the North won the Civil War. It's a lack of education. I think the South has been disproportionately affected. It's a lack of education, and it's also poverty. There's still a lot of really extreme poverty throughout the South.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning so much from this book.
Thank
all
you
the
so
stories
much.
that you share. I'm also, opening my eyes to all the broad influences that you bring into this book. Roasted leg of lamb with Mediterranean spices. I never saw lamb, from Southern cooking.
So
so good.
It's not a super popular meat, but there's a huge Greek population in Birmingham, Alabama.
Greek, yeah.
Yeah,
so. And it's and then you have Cuban style pork chops with mojo sauce, and then just great everyday Southern recipes like rainy day ribs.
Yes,
so it's a quick version.
Those are fantastic.
Okay.
It's actually not quick. It's low and slow, so it's like 300 degrees for a couple hours, and they wind up being like just really succulent and tender with a spice rub. So it's like you can have ribs without putting them on the grill outside.
So this is like classics, but with a global, or with actually a modern view of the social fabric.
So, I mean, even if you do define, as I've said before, Southern food is fried chicken, well, people don't eat that every day, right? Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned earlier, like someone asking me if I've ever met a Jewish person, like, we have the internet in the South. We have, there's this sort of... So there's all sorts of different things. I mean, there's this tremendous Korean population in Atlanta.
Right.
There's incredible Korean barbecue in Atlanta.
And a Hmong community, too, that you wrote about?
In North Carolina.
Tell me about this glimpse of a critter boil that you went to that somebody was like, oh, do you mean the Asian place? Or
Oh, yeah. So it was my dear friend Amy Cameron Evans, who used to be a oral historian for the Southern Foodways Alliance. And I teach at Central Market in Texas, their cooking schools. And I texted her because I was going to be in Houston. And Houston is actually in the Bayou area. People don't think of Bayou in Texas, but Eastern Texas is very similar to Louisiana.
Got it. Okay.
So I texted her I wanted to eat crawfish when I was in Houston. And she texted me back, Asian or Cajun. And I was like, boom, mind blown. What?
How about Asian?
I know, exactly. And so there's a huge population of Vietnamese all along the coast of the Gulf Coast. And so what they did was there's a crawfish boil, like mud bugs, crayfish. And traditionally that would be with like Asian Cajun spices, thyme and paprika and cayenne and hot and spicy. Well, they take that, and then on top of it, it's garlic and lemongrass and ginger. It is incredible, like absolutely delicious. And that's actually where, when we were eating those crawfish, and I'm like butter running down my arms, and I'm looking around, and the table on the left, there's like some black ladies from church, and that table over there was some cowboys, and that table over there were some roughnecks from the oil fields. And I looked around, and there's like it's like the UN, right?
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of everybody, and I literally realized at that moment, peeling those crawfish and eating the crawfish, that's the South. That's the South too, and this is my South, and this is what I want to share with people.
It's beautiful, and it sounds delicious too. I mean, you never knew you could improve upon crawfish, right? Until you add that lemongrass. That's just, wow, that sounds amazing.
They're so good.
Wow. I think that's about all the time we have for today, but Virginia, thank you so much for sharing.
Kathy, thank you so much for having me.
These stories are just gems. I hope everyone gets their hands on this book. It's just out right now. And Secrets of the Southern Table.
Yep.
And Virginia, we'll be seeing more of you on your TV show, too.
Yes, we're working on that. We're definitely working on that. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, you can follow Virginia at Twitter and Instagram, and you have a website.
Yep, virginiawillis.com.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much again, Virginia.
Bon appetit, y'all.
All right. Thanks, everyone at Heritage. We'll see you next week on Eat Your Words.
I like the way you do.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.